I love it when I get a chance to record Chatter That Matters in front of a live audience. To me, it's a win-win. My guest and I feed off the energy in the room. The audience, I have to believe, feel part of something larger than the moment. And selfishly, I get to introduce new listeners to what this show stands for. Human journeys, stories of resilience, possibility, and making a difference, not only to an individual's life, but the lives around them. This episode was taped in front of a sold-out audience at the Toronto Hunt. It's a remarkable 9-hole golf club perched on the bluffs that overlook Lake Ontario. The club's history dates back to 1843, and in 1988, it welcomed the G7. The Hunt's a place where tradition meets setting, and it creates the perfect backdrop for a conversation that matters. And what made this day even stronger is that my guest brought a message that resonated not only with the audience in the room, but with anyone who cares about the future of healthcare.
Just focus on the patient, and everything else will be fine.
And here's our reality. We're living longer, our population is aging, and our system is strained. The question becomes what needs to happen to deliver the care we all need, want, and deserve. I couldn't pick a better guest than Mike Kessel. He's the CEO of Cleveland Clinic Canada. Mike is a visionary with extraordinary empathy.
Our job is to help our patients make more memories together and to live longer so they can spend time with their families.
He's a leader who believes that science, technology, and humanity can walk together, can advance together. He's a champion of what is possible over the next decade as medical breakthroughs continue to accelerate, and he speaks with a clarity that helps people understand both the challenges and the opportunities.
I do think our healthcare system here can be a competitive advantage for the country. Just like there was a brain drain 20 plus years ago where Canadians went into the US to work, doctors, nurses, technologists, etc. What time better than now to say, hey, you're Canadian, come on back.
And here's something you might not expect. Let's call it a little spin to his resume. On top of his many degrees and the respect Mike has earned as one of our most thoughtful voices on healthcare, he's also an internationally ranked ping pong and pickleball competitor.
It didn't help at all with the girls.
He brings all of that with movie star looks and a George Clooney personality.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast. And ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated. Please welcome the one and only magical Mike Kessel.
You're so funny. Thank you.
Before we get into the Cleveland and healthcare and stuff, just give us a sense of you growing up as a kid, because you put a lot of things in your knapsack to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm born and raised in Chicago, so that's the funny accent, right? And right off the bat, for anyone that knows, I'm not related to Phil Kessel. I usually get that all the time. I can barely skate. My parents, one passed away, unfortunately. My dad this year, my mom's 81, and my brother a few years younger than me. I was a pretty active kid. Both of my parents were in the professional service industry. So my mom was a realtor and a school teacher, and my dad was an attorney. Helping other people was a big thing for me. My father was a Chicago Public League table tennis champion, and I'd be in the basement with the table. I'd put it up against the wall in the basement, and I like Forrest Gump. And I got so good, none of my friends wanted to play with me because it was embarrassing, I guess. My dad would drive me around the United States to play in professional table tennis tournaments, and I got a United States Table Tennis Association card and ranking. It didn't help at all with the girls, but it's a cool story to tell. And then I moved here, all the college and education, all that stuff you mentioned, all my studies were really around building teams and how do you optimize teams and lead teams? How do you get people to behave in an aligned fashion was kind of my passion. We moved here to Canada. My wife and I and my 3 kids, one born here, so I count as Canadian, in 2009. To be honest, like we kind of fell in love, not just my job, right, for the clinic, but really with the country.
Rewinding it back before you make the move, you're interviewing for this job and the CEO of Cleveland Clinic, and Toby Cosgrove.
Yeah.
And he says, you've got to bleed our culture. And it's interesting because you're a young guy, you've got a pretty successful career, you've got obviously the charisma, and if that fails, ping pong.
Did you ever really figure out what he was saying when he said you got to bleed our culture?
I'm an entrepreneur. I got thrown into this role. And so I had a business that I had created with a couple partners in Chicago that was sold to Northwestern Memorial Hospital for anyone that is familiar with Chicago, but it competed with Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic in the United States. So when it was sold to Northwestern, Toby called up and said, hey, would you have any interest in moving your family to Canada, where they had opened in 2006, Cleveland Clinic Canada, the first international destination, and they needed some help. And I was absolutely humbled. And he started telling me about the values of the Cleveland Clinic: empathy, innovation, teamwork, function as a unit. For those that don't know, it was started, Cleveland Clinic, out of World War I, kind of MASH style medicine, act as a team, act as a unit, right? In a tent. Those values of empathy, I was raised on empathy and caring for people, teamwork, and doing new cool stuff. When he said, would you consider moving to Toronto in 2009? I was like, oh, this is cool. This is great. Give my family a different experience of raising your kids outside your home country and the innovative culture of the brand of the clinic. I tell my wife, and she started to cry. I'm like, honey, it's going to be all my network, my social network, professional network is in Chicago. Like, don't worry, this is the right time to do it. So the answer is, I think I've been with this organization for 16 years, primarily because the values of the clinic match my own personal values that my parents raised me on.
It's a non-for-profit, which everybody, when you first think on the surface, you go, this is just medicine for the elite.
Right.
But really, this is maybe a bit of a Robin Hood mentality. We will service a certain part of society, but we're going to use that resources and innovation and share the wealth.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because we literally are born in 1921 out of war, essentially. And 4 doctors got together, and after World War I said, let's practice as like military medicine style. Let's salary ourselves, literally create the Cleveland Clinic Foundation and invest in ourselves. No one owns the Cleveland Clinic. Everything gets reinvested into patient care, research, and education. And literally fast forward into 1971, and what happened for the clinic was a physician named Dr. Favellaro invented the coronary artery bypass surgery, which is the main cardiac procedure done. That happened, and the world started to come to Cleveland Clinic, and then everything kind of sprouted. So I think there's 200 countries in the world. We're lucky enough to see patients in 182 of those countries now. And the clinic had grown from 4 doctors to 6,000 physicians in one location to, we own now 40 million square feet across the world in 15 countries and 260 cities with 1 electronic medical record. And the whole thing is just focus on the patient and everything else will be fine. Just like here in Canada, like obviously the system here, it's funded by us as individuals, right? Actually, in the US, 60 to 70% of our revenue comes from the government, right? So it's Medicare, if you will. So we also, in the US, are heavily reliant on government as well.
One of the questions I asked you was, is it a McDonald's franchise? I said, every clinic is the same. And you said, very different. Each one has its own footprint, its own purpose. What's essential is the sense of that your medical record can travel with you.
That's right. So whether you're at Cleveland Clinic Cleveland, Cleveland Clinic Florida, Cleveland Clinic Vegas, Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi, Cleveland Clinic London, England, Cleveland Clinic Canada, it's one electronic medical record. So if they say, oh, Mr. Chapman, good to see you in the UK. Oh, I see you saw Dr. Anil Maheshwari. And I see here's your blood work. I hear, oh yeah. So we're trying to create like a frictionless system as best as you possibly can. That's a big piece of the clinic, if you will. Patient first, period. But we want to make it easy as we possibly can. Canada started up in 2006. But the big strategy in Canada, which people don't realize, is it's to complement the system in a meaningful way. So my partners are the Ministry of Health's academic health science centers, community hospitals, cancer care organizations. I've got lots of publicly funded services that you could just come to. You're already paying for it in your taxes, right? So it's just mass by tax return, so that you could come and see us for. Literally, the feeling in this country is we can really complement the system, and the system has come to us at various times for help, right? And we're happy to help patients no matter what it is. And I think that's been our mentality. And it's been fun, to be honest, like to grow it from 20 people and like 3 physicians to 500 people and 80 physicians all across the country. It's nice when patients talk about the culture and our people. It makes me feel really good because when we get to this country, to be honest, it was really hard for Cleveland.
Yeah, let's talk, because you just present this growth as if it was effortless, but you show up, there's 65% turnover.
Yeah.
It's hemorrhaging. It wasn't bleeding the culture. I'm curious how you turned it around, because today with that growth, you would say, well, there's going to be a lot of turnover, but the turnover's gone from 65% to 3% under your watch. I am a Cleveland Clinic patient, and I was so blown away by how happy everybody was. I actually felt I was a bit like Disneyland in medicine. It was just like,
Look, I mean, it really is, and everyone says this, like people really is the most important thing. Like I'm here with Megan, who heads up strategy and marketing communications for us, and like our values are aligned. It is such a pleasure to work with amazing humans like Megan. I'm hoping like the people that I get to work with, they don't feel good at night if something goes wrong with the patient. They want to correct it. Sometimes in life, like things don't go well, especially in healthcare. It could be our fault. Like someone expected to see a dermatologist in a week or 2, and it took us 4 weeks or 5 weeks. I don't really like that. So I think building the fabric of like good-hearted people that are empathetic, where the patients are not a number. And I will do anything, and Megan knows this, to help anybody. Like you don't have to be a patient at all. That's how it started.
When I look at the healthcare system, and it functions with the status quo. That's the role of the doctor, the pharmacist. And yet you've pioneered a lot of different things. You're even looking at subscriptions and virtual care, 24/7 virtual care. How open is the healthcare system, the status quo, to have someone like you that comes in and says, I'm not competing with you. I want to complement. I can be the pathfinder. I can look how these things work. How open are they to that?
Everyone says like you can't really learn a business on paper, right? You talk to accountants and you talk to finance people. You got to get in there. Right? You got to build relationships. My experience, and I think right away, because look, let's call spade a spade. Like everyone knows, like Cleveland, it's not a city in Canada. And so to me, in this very unique sector in this country, having an American brand and being thought of as private are 2 bad things. So it was apparent when I got here that social and political permission would be really, really important. Big piece of our strategy. So literally, we did things like with Sunnybrook, where we just gave away $1 million projects in their emergency room, like continuous improvement projects to help them improve. And then that led to doing work in bariatric surgery with the Ministry of Health here in Ontario. Then it led to Manitoba and doing hips and knees. It kept going. How can we kind of work together, if you will, in small doses? We're able to help fill some areas that our system here needs a little bit of help. And that's okay. There's a lot of people trying to do that as well. In terms of innovation, during COVID, obviously, it was a challenging period of time for the world, right? And then virtual care took off, okay? And virtual care is great. It's obviously on your phone and you can connect in right away. We have people living, clinicians all over the country in all 10 provinces, 3 territories, licensed 24/7. You could access them within 5 minutes or less, basically. Okay. And that's great, virtual care. However, the challenge with all virtual care is you can only diagnose, our clinicians, 200 conditions by phone, virtually. That's it. By the way, that's good, but it's not great.
But 200, how much would a normal GP do?
So it's funny. There's about 5,000 to 10,000 medical conditions that can be diagnosed, and it continues to grow. Because a crazy stat, there are 900,000 medical articles published each year in 5,600 journals that physicians should be reading. Medical knowledge used to double every 20 to 30 years. Now it's doubling every 73 days. Think about that. People want, of course, access to information. Healthcare is a very cerebral sport. What's nice about this is instead of 200 conditions, we back-end integrated this device. So this device is Health Canada approved. So imagine waking up with a sore throat, you or your family member, and you're at home. The clinician on the phone will say to you, looking at you, oh, what's wrong? I have a sore throat. Then literally on this, you can't see this the brain, if you will. It says you could check your heart rate, you could check your skin, your temperature, your lungs, your ears, you could check your throat. So where the future is going, it's here now, is you're going to give us information about your body that you're doing yourself. And so let's press throat. So I press throat, okay? It tells me on the screen how to do this. Press start. Yes, there's AI built into this, but even better, what happens is that data is back-end integrated. It sends automatically by pressing submit to our clinician while you're on the phone with them. And the beauty is we could diagnose things that we couldn't have diagnosed before. We could hear the heart. We could look down the ears. We look, as I said, down the throat. And literally, instead of 200 conditions to be diagnosed, it jumps up to over 1,000. So the future of virtual care is going to be remote diagnostic equipment like this that's going to be in homes, apartment buildings, schools, First Nations communities, corporations, and we're already doing it. How great is that? So you can avoid trips to the hospital. And those facilities, and I'm talking globally now, remember, real estate's expensive. If you could detach the cost of real estate from healthcare, you can make healthcare more sustainable.
Let's build on it, because as we gain more control of our health, we're now starting to wear a lot of wearable tech. Tell me the good and the bad of people feeling that they are now have the equivalent knowledge of somebody that spent 15 years in medical school and 10 years practicing medicine.
What people don't realize, the data says 75% of your health is determined by your lifestyle. 25% is genetics. When you hit age 60, 90% is lifestyle, 10% is genetics. You're not doomed to your genetics. I mean, certainly there's people that have genetic disorders. Yes. But generally speaking, that's the data. And so when you talk about Whoop and you talk about Aura and you talk about all these wearables, like, I'm a fan, because I think what you're going to see in the future, you're going to see a distributed healthcare model for a segment of the population, meaning you're not going to have to go to the hospital, these expensive real estate structures, and you're going to have data year round every day that you're collecting. You're going to be empowered yourself. And by the way, I mean, we're paying for healthcare here. So literally, I want to help the system. And maybe 50% of healthcare is me, and 50% are my expectations of the system. If I can measure my heart rate variability, measure how much REM sleep I get at night, if I can measure my steps, all that stuff is very valuable information that I could be collecting not in the hospital, not at a family med offices. I think you're going to see way more personalized and customized healthcare information that people are even more empowered to use because of all these devices. And we're already seeing it. We're launching a women's health program that is using Aura, right? We want to know how you're sleeping. We want to know if you're moving. We want to know what you're eating. We want to know all this information. So I think it's also going to lead to longevity.
So how do we know what's real and not? So I'll give you an example. If you go on Instagram, you can put a baseball hat on or cream and grow hair in 2 days. All these promises, right? What do we know that's real, that's coming down the pipeline, that we should be aware of and paying attention to? And how do we discount the fake news that people can just go out and explain because they're trying to turn a buck?
We're an evidence-based organization. We have a free medical school as well, where 32 kids get to go each year and learn about medicine. It means having randomized control studies, going through the process with the FDA or whatever it is for a medication. It means with devices, doing data, collecting data to see, is it accurate or is it not? So I'm a big team guy. So the teams, any of these systems, they have a lot of people and they do the research and they do the data. You have to trust someone because it's a crazy world right now with fake news all over the place, right? I would trust healthcare stalwarts that have teams rather than just sole individuals. But there are sole individuals out there. For example, Atia Huberman, a guy named Roizen, they're all they're very good and absolutely trustworthy, if you will. But it's a handful group of people. I would not rely solely on the media. I would not rely solely, generally speaking, on one individual physician or clinician. I would go to where the data resides and where the homework was done.
One of the things that people are getting very cynical to, and it's part of it is the political climate in the States, and part of it is just maybe being bruised more than once, is big pharma. How much they're advertising that their magic pill can cure. You talk about medicine being a team sport. Do you feel Big Pharma is part of that team, or do you feel that they're running their own game?
100%. They're part of the solution. They're creating, as we all know, GLP-1s and all these other medications that are making a huge difference in the world, right? I think you're going to have trusted partners to figure out these health science centers and taking it through Health Canada, taking it through the FDA process. These pharma companies, in order to get a drug out there, absolutely, they can't skip a step. They got to do the trials. I'm actually right now involved on a board capacity of a US-based company that basically is trying to bring a topical solution to a rare disease called epidermolysa bullosa simplex. Has anybody heard of EB simplex? It's a horrible genetic disorder that 30,000 people in the US have that creates blisters all over people's bodies, and it's babies, et cetera. And it's very difficult to walk. So that company has taken 10 years to get approval.
The mental health crisis, which I know that you're very focused on, because what we're reading, it is truly a crisis. And it's not something that's an anomaly anymore. It's affecting our youth, elderly. What hope can we have that mental health is going to be tackled the same way some of the things you're talking about with our physical health and longevity?
Yeah, look, I mean, you already know I'm an optimist. So I think what's happening here with mental health, which is great, like there's organizations, as you know, like Bell Canada, are doing a good job kind of getting the word out there on mental health. KMH is here, as we all know. They do a great job with mental health. A lot of the corporations are taking leadership roles. The community now is even more in tune how significant this is. And I think some of the tools, like I just showed you before, like virtual care, et cetera, are helping with mental health. There is a lot of money, outside money and donations, group homes being set up by innovative physicians, community living and clinicians living together, kind of helping each other out. I'm very optimistic that this is going to continue to improve. And I do like the fact kids are being identified where you have a mental health challenge. Let's see what we can do about it.
How do you counter this society that says, like, my dad might have said, I used to walk 5 miles to school in bare feet. And today's generation might say, my kids just aren't as tough as I was. How do you counter that and make people aware that mental health is much part of your health as if you had a broken arm or you needed a bypass?
I think it's probably going to take more behavior change of me and all of us to embrace this new generation. I think I mentioned, I have a 15-year-old girl. I got a 19-year-old girl, and I have a 21-year-old boy. And you're right. Like, they think differently, period. My son had an amazing job in Silicon Valley, amazing job. And 2 months ago, he resigned. And I said, well, why'd you resign? He says, I didn't believe in the vision of the founder. Money's fine and great, but it's not my only thing. I think it's going to take changing of our framework, spending a lot of time one-on-one with partners, family members, friends, patients, et cetera. I think it's going to take a lot of time just one-on-one rather than trying to cover it all generally.
Most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about, their final chapter, where they might be living, what their caregiving requirements might be. And we really want people to do that.
That was Leanne Kaufman joining me after I speak with Mike. And we come back. I'm fascinated how a not-for-profit can be of profit to healthcare. And I mean of profit in terms of sharing their wealth, their perspective, different approaches, having the freedom maybe sometimes to do more with their research dollars. And then we talk about how some of us out there are going to live to 100. And what does that mean on so many fronts? My 3 takeaways is Leanne. We'll be right back. Every family has a moment when you look around and you know it's time. It's time to get organized. It's time to protect what you've built. Time to make sure that people you love are cared for, no matter what tomorrow brings. November is Make a Will Month in Canada, and more than half of us still do not have a will. And when someone dies without one, the law steps in. The law decides how your estate is divided, who manages it. Children involved, the court may even decide who becomes their guardian. Bank accounts will be frozen, property can be delayed, and a family already coping with loss can be pushed into even more stress, confusion, and unnecessary costs. A will matters to everyone, a young couple welcoming their first child, a blended family, aging parents who want to make things easier for their kids. What a will does is it puts your intentions in writing, so your loved ones are not left to guess. At RBC Wealth Management Canada, we help Canadians build legacies that honor what matters most. And when you work with one of our advisors, your estate plan and your financial plan are integrated. And if I can offer you one more piece of advice, consider appointing a professional executor with RBC Royal Trust. It removes pressure from your family and helps ensure your affairs are managed with experience and care. So this November, take the time to create your will. Take the time to meet with an RBC Wealth advisor and put your wishes to paper. Protecting your estate and legacy with a will and professional executor, well, that matters to me, to you, and to RBC.
I can't have advanced diagnostics, CT, MRI. I can't be a hospital here. What I just described is probably 70% of the market, right? There's a smaller piece, 30% left. And I could play in that space and I could choose where we want to play. So we build long-lasting, sustainable relationships with everybody. Everybody, period. If we need to call someone 100 times because it's a patient or someone that we come in contact with, we're going to treat them like my mom.
They say there's two sides to every coin. The proof is my guest this week, Mike Kessel. On one side, I could say he's the CEO of Cleveland Clinic Canada, but if you turn it over, you'll find that he's also an internationally ranked ping pong and pickleball player.
I want to move to what I'm fascinated by is this, how big the generational gap would be if we start living to 100, 110, and 120. With that, older people taking up some of the planet's resources and the younger people going, it's my turn. Are we seeing anything else within medicine that the resources are going too much to the elderly and not enough to the youth? Or
people will be living past 100. I think it's every 10 to 20 years, we pick up another 1 to 2 years of life. People have to be ready. What does it mean for retirement? Right? What does it mean for, like you said, the scarce resources? People are more and more interested in kind of Ponce de Leon, right? Like the fountain of youth. They want to stay young. They want to be active. They want to live a long time, and then they want to die. And so in the process, what's happening, there's a chronological age and there's a physiological age. There's a number of research studies. It's actually over 150 where it points to an age-related factor that you could slow something down. So as an example, 55-year-old male could pick up 6.4 years on your life if you floss every day and you see a dentist twice a year. It's a big number. Can you floss every day? Yeah. Oh, by the way, belonging, right? Friends. You could pick up years on your life.
These are really simple things. I mean, flossing every day. Yeah. If you quantify and go, oh my God, I can add years to my life. Maybe next time I won't lie to my dentist.
What are some of the most underrated activities to do to stay young? It isn't a secret. You guys all know it, right? Movement, right? Can you walk 30 minutes a day? There's data to show that's got a big impact. Can you walk 30 minutes each day? And the other thing is your body has to recover. You need your sleep. And so I would say those are two big things. Stress is the number one ager. It could take up to 42 years off your life. There's data behind that. Family stress. It could be work stress. By the way, I'm not like a pillar of health or anything, but even a couple of years ago, I started to meditate every other day for 10 minutes. I would highly encourage people to do something to reduce your stress. Everyone does something different, but those are the three big things to me to help with the aging process that there's solid data behind.
What if people go, but let's personalize that. Somebody's an entrepreneur. They're wired to live on a tightrope. They're not happy if they're not getting up at 5:30 in the morning and taking their machete and conquering some market. What do you say to them? Do you say to them that you should change what you're passionate about because the data? Or can you say you can find a way to live that way?
I think you could do both. When my wife tells me, hey, honey, I want to chill, or hey, honey, I want to go to dinner, or hey, honey, let's take a walk, let's walk the dog. I'm like, okay, I think it takes in the brain turn on your brain and like listen and hear and be, okay, I got to do this. I got to prioritize. This is important to me because I actually think people in healthcare in the memory making business, like our job is to help our patients make more memories together and to live longer so they can spend time with their families, right? Or their friends or their loved ones. I think that's what we're in. If you broaden out the healthcare sector, that's what I think our job is. If I need to be nudged, I'm cool with that. Right. But I got to be willing and accepting because at the end of the day, this is me, Mike, personally. I want to see my 3 kids get married. I want to see my grandkids. I want to participate in life. I want to be able to climb Mount Kilimanjaro age 70 if that's what I want to do.
I mean, this is a beautiful thing you just said. I want to just take a moment. We're in the memory creating business, but, the pharmacist is measured by how many prescriptions they fill. Process, optimization, technology to make them go faster. How do you instill and roar with heart in a system that's really just trying to survive by somehow trying to come to terms with too much demand and not enough supply?
I think you're the owner of your health. You own your body. You own your brain. It's like we could all make excuses and that's fine. There's usually always options. You got to fight hard sometimes. I had bone spurs and some loose fragments in my ankles and there was a 3-year wait list to see a foot and ankle surgeon here. So I realize there are challenges with the system. By the way, there's also challenges in the US. You got to own your healthcare. You got to be your own advocate because we do it in other elements of our life and make choices on your education. Right? Do I go public? Do I go private? Do I go away? Do I stay here? Do I live off campus? Do I live on campus? I think we should all do it in healthcare, especially given the fact that 60 and after, 90% of your health is your lifestyle.
Let's take a couple of questions from the audience.
Is Cleveland a private corporation? And number 2, how are you funded? And number 3, how do you attract your medical staff?
Cleveland Clinic US is a foundation. No one owns Cleveland Clinic US. On the $17 billion of revenue, any surplus that is made gets reinvested in patient care, research, and education. Cleveland Clinic Foundation owns Cleveland Clinic Canada. Because I wasn't here, Cleveland Clinic Canada wasn't here when Tommy Douglas created the system, I'm not an official entrant or participant in that system. I'm a complementary player. So I'm considered locally private, owned by a foundation, which is good because it gives me flexibility. That flexibility to me means I can do things that are both publicly reimbursed, i.e. through OHIP here, dermatology, orthopedics, cardiology, sports medicine, x-ray, ultrasound, bone density, mammography. Those are all things we do. I could also do things that are privately reimbursed. A consultation with a dietitian, a consultation with a psychologist. I could do these things. They're not covered by the system. And how do we find our clinicians? We're lucky in that, generally speaking, the physicians and the clinicians will come to us now. It wasn't that way 10, 12 years ago, where no one knew Cleveland Clinic was in Canada. But thanks to great marketing efforts and hopefully good patient experiences, when we have an opening, we used to have 1 or 2 people apply. Now it's hundreds. Word gets out that we're an evidence-based, evidence-infused organization, and those are the ones that clinicians want to work for.
The last couple of things I want to talk about quickly is DNA. I went out to BioAir in Calgary and had this blood test and all these different markings. And now they're saying this could go down to $8 or $9 tests. It could eventually be a pinprick and you do your own. Is that a good thing for people to know what's inside them that they're walking around? Is some people are going to think that's a time bomb? Other things that people are going to say that's something I can work on preventive strategy?
This is kind of a philosophical question for each of you to individually make. Do you want information about yourself and your body or do you not? I don't think that's the healthcare system's job to tell you that. I think it's almost like a joint decision-making process with your physician to understand the pros and the cons. Me personally, I like to know what's going on in my body. My dad had retinitis pigmentosa, which is like deterioration of the rods and the cones in your eyes. So he went blind 17 years ago. I want to know if I have the gene for that, if I'm at risk, if you will. There is a good chance, clinicians will tell you this, we're going to find something. But most likely, not all the time, you're going to die with that nodule that we found, not from it. But it's your decision.
But let me counter that. If we had all the data from everyone, couldn't we be much more efficient with how we utilize our healthcare research and resources by the collective data that we find within the Canadian population?
The answer is yes. However, unfortunately, every sector has a cost factor. Like, they're spending 20 grand per person in the US in healthcare. We're spending 5 grand. Our system, our taxes would go up from 50 cents on the tax dollar to probably 70 or 80 cents. Like, it's not sustainable. It's a cost of living thing. Like, you just couldn't do it. And to be honest, from an evidence-based perspective, it's also not the right thing to do. There's not a lot of data to test everybody, put everyone on an MRI under a magnet. There's just not a lot of data on it.
One of the things that I was amazed with, because of all the things you're working on, including boards, including the things you're involved with, the cardiac smash. So let's go back to ping pong. You've created a fundraiser that's generated over $1 million.
So basically, 10 years ago, started what's now Canada's largest ping pong tournament in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Heart disease, brain disease, that absolutely is near and dear to myself. And, I want to fund the research. It goes to $2 million over 8 years. All that money goes to heart and stroke researchers or brain health researchers at the hospitals that you guys all know, right? To do the data, to say, does this TAVI valve or surgical valve, heart valve, does it work, right? Or does it not work? And to get it through the process, right? That is fun.
What's your legacy? Like, at the end of it, all of this, what do you hope, as you're leaving this world and you say, that's something that I did that I'm so proud of?
I just think, it's not fancy at all. I just want to be a good person.
I always end my podcast with my 3 takeaways. And the first one, we're the CEO of our own health. It's one thing to rely and have to react when we're ill, but there's an awful lot of stuff that we can do to prevent it. And I think you get past 60 years old, 90% of it's, do you want to move? Do you want to floss? And everything else that you're talking about, I thought was wonderful. Second thing is the importance of relationships, and in a world as busy as we are in and healthcare that is just constantly in a grind, it's amazing how you've carved out a space of showing up, as you said, an American company with an American city. And through relationships, you built an opportunity to create an enterprise that does so much and gives back so much. And I think relationships is something we often take for granted, our relationships, but I don't think we do enough building new relationships. And the final thing is probably the most magical thing. I've always looked at insights and memes and how to frame something that just makes people stop and say, I've never thought of it before. And I would put you in the top 5 when you said we're in the business of creating memories, making people live longer, have more beautiful time with their family, hug their granddaughters, whatever we are, that's the business we're in versus whether you need antibiotics or not. So I'm just absolutely delighted. And I still have my man crush on you, but I think a big round of applause for Mike Kessel. Thank you.
Joining me now is Leanne Kaufman, the president and CEO of RBC Royal Trust. Leanne's made several appearances on my show, and I often go to her when it comes to matters of life and money. Leanne, welcome back to Chatter That Matters.
It's great to be back, Tony. Thanks for having me.
A lot of this is about matters of the heart, caring for others, caring for ourselves. And I just want to close this part of the show with any advice you can give to people, because we tend to think that we're immortal. We tend to put off a lot of the dotting I's and crossing T's. But if there's 1 or 2 thoughts you can leave my audience with in terms of getting your money matters in order so that you can focus on what really matters, your health, what would those thoughts be?
Well, it all comes back to planning, and whether that's planning for your health, planning for how you're going to live your life in your later years. Wealth is part of that, because your finances are inextricably linked to some of the choices and goals that you'll have. And so most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about their final chapter, where they might be living, what their caregiving requirements might be. And we really want people to do that and to factor this in as part of their personal planning, their financial planning, and then ultimately their estate planning to make sure that they're setting their loved ones that they're leaving behind up for success.
Sage advice for all, and I appreciate you joining me in Chatter That Matters.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.